Now that didn't work because we're meant to be doing this. I've got to do my jingle, people. First show errors. But let's do the jingle and then we'll come
Run
back.
the music.
And welcome. Here we are for MindAbility Matters. I am so excited by this, genuinely. And I couldn't have a better first guest than a very dear mate, Toby Kheng from Freeformers. Toby, say hello to everyone.
Stop it. You make me blush. There is nowhere I would rather be on a Friday afternoon here in the UK for our American listeners. Cracking a cold one. I hope you got the ASMR vibes off that. Yeah, cheers. Happy Friday. It's a pleasure to be here, Sam.
Happy Friday. So this all came about when you and I were talking about, okay, how can we, number one, help showcase some of the great work that people in our combined network are doing, and just have a conversation about some of the good stuff that actually is happening, because I know we're very good at bashing it, right? So that's how MindAbility Matters came about. The whole premise of this is we've had the privilege and pleasure of working with over 165 consultants and business owners over the last 4.5 years. There's some great work going out there in terms of the world of work and how it's changing. And I really want to showcase some of the best of the best. And I am a bit biased to say that most of them have worked with us. I don't care. I'm going to say it. I think they have. And let's start with the lovely Toby. Toby, I'd love to start off with just your journey. How did you get to where you are today with Freeformers?
Like from the very beginning? Where do you want me to start? It was a warm 1987 summer and I was born.
I knew you were going to go back there, and I was like, oh my God, just how far back is he going to go? Could be a little bit orcs. But yeah, when did you first come up with the idea of Freeformers? Because I know that there was another Freeformers previously, wasn't there? When did you decide that this was your path, and what was the straw that broke the camel's back for you?
Oh, wow. We ready for a famous Toby 10-minute monologue? Let me try and
Yes,
make it a
please.
bit quicker. So, yeah, as you say, right, Freeformers existed before I started restarted it, if you like, in August 2023. Freeformers is actually where me and Emily, my business partner, is where we actually met. That's where we first worked together, and to this day is one of the best places I've ever worked.
Love it.
Operated with purpose, loads of innovation, loads of creativity. And that company then took a change of direction whilst we were there. It developed an app, and it's like, well, I'm not really into that, so that's fine. And we let that one. I left. Emily left a little bit before me to move to New Zealand, of all places. Yeah, Emily worked in New Zealand for a couple. Hang on, this isn't Emily's episode. This is my episode. You can ask Emily about New Zealand when you bring her on, right?
Yes.
So though, and then I kind of just left Freeformers really, and I knew people that still work there, and they developed this app and tried to launch it. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out. And in January of 2023, I got wind that they were winding it up, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a shame," because it was always like a really great company. But when they moved to the app, they started calling themselves Team Together. So they'd not really done anything with the Freeformers brand until then. I was like, okay, well, I kind of got this idea about redesigning the world of work, and Freeformers was always about helping people be ready for the digitization of the workplace. And I was like, okay, can I bring back and reinvent that purpose that Freeformers first came with, and live and breathe it through a refreshment of the brand and the purpose and all that kind of stuff? Because a huge amount of respect to Guy Fernando, who started it, incredibly visionary, but also operated from a place of understanding the data behind it. And as you know, right, and we'll probably get into it a little bit later, is our methodology is all about the data that sits behind employee experience. So really inspired by the incredible vibe that was there and the work that was done previously, but also Guy Fernando's approach to data and the conversations I had with him in particular about like where that could go. So our hope is that we're kind of living and breathing that original mission, achieving it in a very, very different way. But essentially, I go on, right? I told you as a monologue. January 2023. I was kind of like, okay, so is anyone going to do anything with it? And it turns out, no, apparently not. No one was going to do anything with it. So I started having conversations about what that might look like to obtain the trademark and all that kind of stuff, and not really thought anything of it. I was like, this probably won't ever happen. And then lo and behold, in kind of July 2023, it actually happened. I was like, oh, okay. And then the week before that, our second child was due. So you acquired the Freeformers name, set up the company. Then the next week, our second child was born, and took 4 weeks off of paternity. So that's kind of the journey of Freeformers, I guess. What was the straw that broke the camel's back? I think there was lots of straw that broke the camel's back over a long period of time. And my real issue is that the industry I've predominantly worked in, bit of HR, bit of learning and development. The consultancy work that I've done since leaving corporate in organizations has always been like I've done notable projects. They've won awards. The stakeholders love them. The company I've worked for loves them. They get, like I said, they get awards, right? But one of the things that started me on this journey was developed a awesome thing for a large international bank, which my brother-in-law works at. And he took me aside at my one of my nieces. It was her second birthday party. He said, "Hey, you're in the learning game. I did this like e-learning the other day, and it was rubbish. I absolutely got in the way, didn't like it, all this kind of stuff. It's like, what a waste of time." He's like, "Do you know anyone who would have developed that?" It turns out that was one of the projects I led on, sold, delivered as part of this company, won an award, like I say, but the end user didn't enjoy it. I was like, we're delivering and designing the wrong stuff here. But the company I was working for wasn't going to change because they were making loads of money out of it. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So that was 2 companies ago. Then in the last company, there was an induction project where the budget was, a notable six-figure budget. We were applying human-centered design to the induction onboarding experience. And 25% of the budget was looking at the user insight and the research and how we could affect the user journey. But ultimately, what we delivered as a project team was a 3-hour webinar, albeit a really good one.
Yeah, I bet.
Highly polished, for the money, right? It'd have to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's the best.
Highly polished, looked really good. It was a step change in what was delivered before. But none of the user insight was saying we need a highly polished version of what had gone before. There was a whole host of other stuff that really needed to be fixed. But because the contract, the stakeholders' job was to deliver this 3-hour webinar, but better. The contract was to deliver the 3-hour webinar. So all that user insight got funneled up into this one solution. When the research was telling us, there was like a whole host of other things you could fix with that amount of money. But the system that they operated in, both the stakeholder and the company, just like meant that they were never going to deviate from that, regardless of how much human-centered design that was applied. That was never going to be the case. So I got frustrated with that and went, look, you can do human-centered design, but actually the system you are operating within is actually disabling you from designing the right stuff. Again, that project went on to be nominated for awards, but ultimately, one of the key success metrics of that project was attrition. We're gonna reduce attrition. It's like, if you think a 3-hour webinar on someone's first day is going to reduce attrition, call me crazy, but I think that's probably the least of your worries and what you're going to want to fix. But it paid the bills for the company. Someone's job was to do that, so of course that's what you're going to deliver. I'm never going to, try and fight. Well, I am actively trying to find that framework and that system within HR. So, I started going crazy. Because we just had our second child, and started mapping what is the alternative then. If I'm so frustrated with this, what is the alternative? Yeah. And the alternative is to apply human-centered design on a more holistic level as a HR or people function. But the whole system of that needed to change. But then no one was measuring it properly either. The whole reason it wasn't being changed because it wasn't being measured properly. It was being measured through employee sentiment, not actually performance data. So we created this metric that was born out of employee lifetime value, which was already a thing before we started. How much value do you get out of your people over the amount of time they've got that relationship with the company? The other metric that we kind of have created that didn't exist before was employer lifetime value. How much value are you giving your people at the time of the relationship? Now, those two numbers individually tell interesting things, but actually the real data is where what's the ratio between those two things, and that's where we're getting some really interesting insight correlated with the people data, the stuff that HR teams and people teams are already measuring. But that's now unlocking the door to delivering better work for our clients and stuff that will impact the business but also the employees, rather than just ticking the boxes of we need to do this, so let's spend money on it. Okay, it's 11 minutes past. I think that was a 10-minute monologue.
I mean, I think you did very well with that, but I would like to dive into your measurement and the impact it's having, because I know that you and I have spoken at length about this in other forums and on other shows. There's so many cynics out there who are like, yeah, well, you can't measure it, and all of this is just an overhead and a cost. When you're presenting this to those kind of people, how is it landing with them, and what are the kind of reactions that you're finding now?
Well, I think the important thing to know is what was the kind of the data that was existing with that we did with before freeformers. What kind of research were we doing, and how is that landing with our clients and their stakeholders? And when you do human-centered design and gather lots of human insight, you present that back to your stakeholders, and it's bad, they dispute it. They're like, how many people did you talk to? And how did you select the people you talked to? And all this. They can't just say, oh, actually, okay, what should we do as a result? They try and dispute the data. So what we've tried to create is indisputable data where it's like, well, these are the things that are actually happening. So you can't tell me whether you think this is true or not. It is true because it's commercial and operational data. And therefore, it's kind of, it lands way better because you're kind of taken a bit more seriously as a result. You're not just saying, oh, this is what our people are thinking and feeling. I'm never going to say that isn't important, but you have to be able to substantiate that with the cold, hard fact about what's happening. Because why do employers want to treat people? Why do employers want people to be happier? Because if people are happier, they produce more, they engage more, the company performs better. That's the result. Like, we live in a capitalist society, rightly or wrongly. The reason you have a human resources team or a people team is to make sure that your people make the most money for that company that they can. Now, if that's through happiness and good vibes, good on you. But you need to be able to still quantify that it's producing an outcome, because the outcome isn't people are happier and more engaged with their work. The outcome is the company is better as a result. And I think this is where HR tends to, we tend to get a little bit lost in that conversation, because absolutely the reason why I even started working in this industry to start with was to make people feel better about their work and be better at work and have a better relationship with their employer and all that kind of stuff. But that's the rest of the business doesn't see it that way. The rest of the business sees it as like, well, we have people to make money, so how are you helping people be more productive and help the company make more money? Oh, we're not, but we helped. We didn't have any lawsuits this year, so we helped you avoid that. And I'm like, well, I don't care. You're reducing yourself to a cost center there rather than kind of a going entity within the organization. So it just gets taken more seriously as a result. Not necessarily by HR people. In fact, it probably gets taken less seriously by most HR people, but it gets taken more seriously by the rest of the business. And I think that's our mission is to just create this as like the ongoing way of doing it. Like, you should just be doing this. And again, I keep hammering it home. I'm not saying don't measure the people stuff and how people think and feel, but there are 1,000,001 companies doing that in 1,000,001 different ways.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try and create that. Like, they're probably all quite valid, but the gap is, how do you relate that to business performance? And that's kind of where we found the niche, if you like.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, I must be approached 7, 8 times a week So obviously several times a day, right? From different people saying, we can measure this, we can measure. Great, but tell me why you're different and how you're different, and how you're going to placate the COO or the CFO or the business owner who say, look, I care about my people. Don't get me wrong, you're implying I don't. But the risk sits with me, and there's only so far I can go. And that's why I love this so much. It bridges that gap. And I think the commercially savvy HRs will be running towards this as fast as they can, because it's going to demonstrate to them, this is what we've done and look at the outcome we've got, because you can't argue that.
Well, quite. And this is I kind of was looking at HR audits, right? So most fractional HR people, as an example, do a HR audit. How can we mitigate the risk? And you're like, well, if that is your first point of contact with a client, yes, it's very important. I'm not going to say it isn't. But when that's your first point of contact with a client, you're setting yourself up in a relationship where I am just here to cross the T's and dot the I's. I nearly got those the wrong way around. I'm just here to do that. And you're like, well, but no one in HR goes into HR to do HR audits and make sure companies are legally compliant and the dots and the crosses are done, right? They go in for the more human strategic stuff. So, when you go in with a HR audit like that, it's like, well, you've set yourself up for a fail there, because you are just a doer rather than a strategic thinker. So I think what we've accidentally built is just like a more strategic HR audit, which you can combine with an existing one to then have a more strategic relationship with your clients. That's kind of where we want to get to. That how do we enable HR people, internal and fractional, to unlock the work they want to do? Because history has told us people are finding that difficult. And if it's through this, then great. And I'm not saying it's the only way of doing it, but so far I've seen, I think it's the best way of doing it. But I am incredibly biased.
Just a little insy bit, but as well you should be. Okay, so let's look at what's happening this side of the pond and across the pond. So we've just had a budget update. There's going to be lots of companies who are pivoting now. Funny enough, I spoke to my fractional CFO today, who said, actually, I was expecting it to be a lot worse in terms of capital gains increases and everything else. And I was like, whoa, we still got January to come. So whilst we've got a bit of breathing space, let's see what happens. I digress. Going back to my previous point, though, with organizations, and certainly some of the interims, the fractionals, the consultants who are looking at something like this and walking around it right now to say, okay, I love it, but how can I use it? If they're looking to go into some of these organizations who now sadly are going to have to pivot and change because of some of the changes in the UK, what's your recommendation? How can they collaborate or work with someone like you to help move that kind of change forward? Because I see an angle of that as well, which would be super useful.
Well, essentially, in any times of hardship in an economy, you're expected to do more with less. So how do you make that happen, right? That's what you want to be able to do.
Totally.
And when you mean less, it's generally do with less people, but generate more revenue. So I don't think that necessarily, that narrative never really goes away, whether the economy is prosperous or not. But the interrogation of that performance metric is probably laser sharp when the economy's at its worst on both sides of the pond, right? So I think it's to look at it as a more strategic viewpoint, because how much performance are you getting out of your people, and how much have an impact are you having on that, and how much spend are you doing on that? Like, you need to know when it's going well and when it isn't. So it can't be just like, oh, the chips are down, how do we get more out of our people? It's like, you should be getting more out of your people the entire time. And it's not necessarily like you get more and more and more and more and more, because the human capacity will not allow you to have exponential growth. But what the data allows you to do is at least measure it and see when you're investing more in your people and getting less output, to then make strategic decisions about what you do. Do you invest more in your people? Do you reduce the investment in your people? What knock-on effects that can have? And being able to understand that when you plug in initiatives and unplug initiatives that they're going to have an impact. At the moment, we kind of fly blind because it's just like, okay, if we unplug the benefits portal, what's going to happen? Well, you actually have no idea because you don't know what it was like before because you weren't measuring it. What would it be like if we unplugged our learning management system? Well, you don't know that either because you don't actually know if it's ever having any impact. So all of these kind of tick box HR activities kind of like are completely unproven. Apart from, again, the functional legal stuff that absolutely has to happen, all the other stuff is unproven. No one's proven that L&D has any impact on an organization because every organization I've worked with that's under 100, 200 people, they don't have any learning people. They don't have people creating learning for them. It's like, well, they either procure hugely respected and talented external solutions, or the way their organization is designed means they don't actually need it. So, of course, it's slightly different in larger organizations, but ask yourself the question: if I unplug this, what would be the result? And if you don't know, then you're not doing your analysis and your data and analysis strategy any favors, because you should really at least have an indicator of what it might move.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think about working in organizations with hypergrowth, it always seemed to be the afterthought. I remember when we got sales training in, or another time it was communications training, or whatever that training might be. But the external provider gave us a lovely little questionnaire afterwards saying, out of 10, how do you rate this? And of course, you give someone like that kind of one pager, if you like, that personally now I think is highly ineffective with how did you find it? 20 minutes or half an hour before you're just about to go to the pub.
Yeah.
Well, everyone's going to say, yay, it was great. Can I go now?
Yeah. Happy sheets is what you used to call them in L&D, because it's literally 10 10 10 10 10 10 10 if they had a really good experience, because it's like, well, I'm about to hand this to the person who just did the training, right? So it's like 10s all the way. Or if they hated it, then they'll probably still put a high-ish score, maybe like 6s or 7s, and then go and talk a smack about it to their colleagues and the friends and family. So yeah, like that stuff. Most organizations design these things for their own benefit rather than thinking about the people, and this is where we talk about human-centered design, right? That it becomes really important, because generally a survey has been designed because the company wants some information out of its people. And then so you look at the platforms outside. Qualtrics, as an example, is a very good platform for designing surveys, analyzing the data and the insights. The user interface for the person filling out the survey is garbage, right? I used to have a Qualtrics subscription in a previous company. I went to them and said, look, I love everything about the back end, but I can't send this out to people and reasonably expect them to complete it because your UI is terrible. And they went, oh, okay, well, we'll feed that back. And as far as I can see, nothing's changed. Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Whereas if you look at something like Typeform, now the analysis and dashboarding you get out of the back of Typeform isn't as good as Qualtrics. However, filling out a Typeform form is way nicer than filling out a Qualtrics form or a SurveyMonkey or Google form, Microsoft form. They're all pretty rubbish. But organizations design them and send them out because, like, well, we need this, so our people should fill it out. And like, well, it doesn't really work like that. And then they wonder why they're only getting 10, 20% completion rates on these surveys and they're having to badger emails and stuff. It's like there's an element of anonymity. Like, people are worried that it's not anonymous, but actually, generally, you're just providing a really sucky user experience. And that's symptomatic across everything that most HR, L&D, internal comms teams do, is they produce stuff, not necessarily content, but mostly content, for their own benefit, without thinking about the end user. Compliance training is an amazing one.
Oh my God.
My wife came back from maternity leave a couple of months ago and spent literally 2 days doing compliance training. It's like, you've not really thought about your employees there in that situation.
No.
You've thought that you need to have the box ticked to be compliant, which I can't argue against. That's fair enough. But you've not really thought about how that impacts the user. Her first 2 days back from maternity leave doing compliance training. And if anyone's ever done, everyone will have done some sort of compliance training, e-learning. I watched over her shoulder for about 2 minutes before I wanted to poke my eye out with a hot fork. That's not the phrase, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Hot poker? Poke my eyes out with a hot
Yeah,
poker?
yeah.
There you go.
I mean, all good. All good. Okay, so Freeformers continues to do well and it evolves and it grows. What role do you want to see Freeformers play as we continue through the evolution of the world of work?
Well, there's two elements. I think the first one is prove that changing the way HR and people teams do stuff is valuable, because if you can't prove it, then no one's going to change.
Valid.
And then the second one is then design the change. Like, okay, so what does that design look like? And that design will vary from organization to organization, but you'll be doing it on human-centered insight and a robust data ecosystem. Yeah, I just want people to design better relationships between employer and employees, because I have been in too many sucky situations as an employee. I've seen friends and family be in that situation, and you're like, this is rubbish. Like, why we spend too much time working to do this, and we've got Gen Z who will literally turf an employer out on the curbside, not the other way around, because they won't stand for it as much as anyone. So, whilst I'm a millennial here, having a bit of a rant how shit the world of work is, I'm nothing compared to what a younger generation is gonna do as a result. So, you can either get on board and change the way you do things now, or you can die by the time Gen Z equals 50% of the workforce, because they'll literally suffocate the aging leadership within companies, because the aging leadership is incapable of leading in a digital environment. Not leading. Should stop drinking the beer, really, shouldn't they? But there we go.
Well, I mean, just crack on, Toby.
Friday.
It's Friday. Woo! Yeah, and I think we were talking earlier, weren't we, before we came on air, about just the impatience of that generation. And when I look back at, say, even my parents' generation, someone said something really profound to me the other day, and they said, we've gone from it being okay to working in a company and learn for 30 years to being frustrated when something doesn't work in 4 months. Why we've almost got to find that balance, because I agree with you. I think, Gen Z is way more impatient and they want it all now. But there's also a point where, call me controversial, I think they need to begin to see the patterns of what comes next, what happens when something goes wrong, and see that. I also agree that they will be able to identify and find new ways through it. But I'm actually quite excited to see how this pans out, because there's going to be a battleground in order to get to the middle ground, and I don't know what the fallout's going to be. The carriage clock, thank God, is gone. And well done for 30 years. We'll just give you a piece of mental that you can then put on your mantelpiece, as you can't afford to go out because your pension's so crap. But there is that middle ground, and I'm not sure where we're going to land with it.
Sorry, my headphones just gave me a notification in my ear that the battery was running low, so I missed the end of that, but I think I got it. Hang on, I'll just turn them off, because then I can still hear you. Can I still hear you? Can you say something?
I mean, hello.
I can still hear you. Okay, good. I was like, why? I had the noise cancellation turned on for some reason. Like, I'm in a wooden cabin in a garden. Like, there's no one else here. I don't need to cancel the noise from anything. Where are we going to land on that spectrum? Well, if you look at what Josh Dreen is saying as an example, he says we're going to get to the vast amount of change and then some, like hugely different infrastructure for an economy, not just the world of work. I think we've got some way to get there, but I can kind of buy into the vision. I can't see it going any other way than changing. I can't see organizations remaining successful in a world where they keep to the status quo. I just don't think people will stand for it, because regardless of what Gen Z say and do, all the other generations feel the same. They've just never acted upon it, and that's the difference. Is the action that a younger generation is willing to take. And so, you as an organization, and like, I imagine, I'd love to know if any HR team is looking at this, but like, what is the data telling you about the different demographics that come into your organization, stay and leave? But also, what are you giving them to make them stay and leave? Because the things that will make me stay at a company are not the same things that will make Gen Z stay at the company. Yet, if me and someone in Gen Z applied for the same role and got the same remuneration and the same responsibility, we'd be treated exactly the same. So it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense either, because you've just assumed that anyone that joins your organization wants exactly the same experience. That's no longer the case. The customer world has figured this out, that there's that hyper personalization and that ability to craft different customer journeys depending on who the customer is. Yet with employees, we've not figured that out yet. We go, oh, you're an employee, great. You go through the one employee experience, not the one of 4 or 5 different experiences that you may be able to offer as an employer. Which is kind of ridiculous, because the technology has been able to make that happen from a customer's perspective, but we haven't translated that into the employee experience design journey. And that's just like, that makes no sense.
No.
Why have we not done that? I can tell you why we haven't done it, because I've just set my own question up and I'll answer it. Sorry. But it's because the whole system of HR having a recruitment team, and learning and development team, internal comms team, employer brand team, benefit and comp, all those kind of things, all those roles only really seek to validate their own existence. And I was on a live stream the other day, and L&D teams and internal comms teams are constantly in battle about who does what and who has that slice of the pie. But they'll also complain about the volume of work they have to do. And it's like, well, if you've got loads of work, why are you complaining that someone else is trying to take your work off you? That doesn't seem to make much sense, because they're trying to validate their own existence, right? That they want to prove that they are a valuable part of the organization, but they do it by doing stuff rather than analyzing it and proving that the data shows that they're doing the right thing. So what disables the ability to get to where I think the world is going to get to is the structure of how you work with your employees, or the teams that look after your employees. So that, unless that changes, nothing will change, because you'll only make very, very small gains in those areas. And so my big prediction, I went on stage and said this in Birmingham at about this time last year, was the companies that will win, or the small to medium businesses now that are adopting a new way of working with their people, because they can, because they're smaller, they're more agile, they don't have legacy systems and all that kind of stuff. They can do that. And then in 10 years, they will be the larger organizations. And either the larger organizations will have figured out and go, oh, what are small to medium businesses doing? How do we adapt to that model? Because they are way more successful, productive, and growing quicker than we ever have done. Or they'll die. And there's some large companies I do hope die, because they're so ineffective in what they do. It's like, well, you should cease to exist. You're not adding value to society, to the people that employ you, to your clients. You're just existing. And generally, I'm talking about big consultancy firms, I think, there. But reading between the lines, that sounds like a very accurate description. And with that, another swig of beer.
Oh, here he goes. But do you know what? Yes. And again, I think you and I spoke about the existence of what's wrong with the world when we look at that. A graduate who comes out with a massive amount of debt, not needed these days, goes into a role where they are flogged to death work-wise, because you can stay here too and be like me in 20 years. We've had this conversation. And then actually you ultimately earn less than the minimum wage because of all the hours you're doing, because you promised something in 20 years' time that actually is not going to happen, because the company's going to be dead. So you might as well not do it to start with.
Yeah. Like the whole carrot dangling piece is just crazy, because our data tells us that people stay at companies for an average of 4.4 years. And I think the quoted average in UK research is 4 years. So, our data is pretty much aligned to the UK benchmark, certainly. So if that is the case, if that's the societal trend, and the trend shows that it's remaining pretty steady at the moment, so there isn't this massive reduction to it being, every 2 years or every 1 year at the moment. That might be impacted by some of the older generations moving slower and the younger generations moving quicker, and it kind of just all balances out. But in a world where people will leave your company when they join, how do you work with them then? Rather than going, how do we fight attrition? I wouldn't fight it if I were you. I would just accept that it's going to happen and make the very best out of that situation you can, and turf your employees out the other side of employment with your company with the very best opinion, being an advocate of your organization. And if they can be a customer of your company, keeping them as a customer of your company, giving them recruitment referrals, all this kind of stuff, maintaining that relationship. There's a whole ridiculous notion that when someone leaves your company, the relationship between employer and employee ends. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's not true. It continues way beyond that. I still have relationships with every company I've ever worked with, good or bad, right? That I still have that relationship. They might not have a relationship with me, but I definitely have a relationship with them, and I act upon it when I talk to people, when I say things, when I write things on the internet. Definitely happens, right? And that is accepted. And that never used to happen 20 years ago because platforms like Glassdoor didn't really exist. We didn't have this proliferation of lots of people being to offer opinions on their employers. And still now it's a little bit cloak and dagger, right? Like,
Yeah.
should I say anything about that ex-employer? You know, can I come on here and say quantifiably the things that were wrong with some of my ex-employers? Probably not, because I'd probably get in a bit of hot water, and that sucks. That doesn't make any sense. Like, if you treat people like garbage, you should be held accountable for it by your ex-employees and how they act. But the reason employers don't act upon it is because it's like hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil type thing. Is like it's not measurable.
Yeah.
And when it is measurable, Glassdoor, as an example, it is measurable how good your workplace is. Oh, that's just disgruntled employees. I was like, yeah, but you probably made them disgruntled. Like that, you can't just say they're disgruntled. Like, what did you do to cause that reaction and for them to post that? And can you mitigate that and design something in the future, which means that doesn't happen? Oh no, it was just John. He was always grumpy. Right? Was he? Because you employed him in the first place. So like he must have been all right at some point.
Yeah.
He was
John
all
was
right.
perfectly fine this morning when he left home.
John was fine when you employed him, and then all of a sudden, then he left, and there's like, actually, John isn't great at all. You're like, no. Well, the only variance there is you employed him,
Yeah,
and did stuff to John. So find out what it is and make sure it doesn't happen again. That's pretty simple, but we seem to kind of just close our eyes and close our ears to it. Or organizations I know that most organizations, hey, we got a lot of rubbish Glassdoor reviews at the moment. Do we think the senior leadership team can post some positive reviews and get their teams to post positive reviews? So you see this trend on Glassdoor, right, where it's like negative, 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 negative. Whoa! And then all of a sudden, days later, loads of positive reviews. And like, interesting. What's happened there? Did they change as an employer overnight? Nah, they just paid some people to write some reviews for them, literally, because they're employees, right?
right. Yeah, and that's been going on for years. I think the thing that I do feel sorry for is particularly there've been so many, Gen Zers recently who have said, "Look, I'm resigning today, and this is why I'm resigning." There've been a few who've actually recorded their disciplinary meetings and posted those and have gotten a lot of trouble. That's just going to happen more and more. So wake up and get used to it.
Yeah, you have nowhere to hide. Like, the reason you could get away with a sucky employee experience 20, 30 plus years ago was because you could hide it. You could quite easily hide it. There was the social norms where you wouldn't talk about it, not publicly and openly, because you couldn't talk about it publicly and openly because, like, before social media existed, you couldn't, right? So all of a sudden there's this brave new world, and it's not even, this is the stupid thing, right? It's not even a brave new world. It's like social media has been around for a while now. Like, there are these mechanics to enable people to talk about this, and I talk about this with Emily quite a lot, like Reddit forums, and we talked about this on Monday.
Yeah, we did.
Reddit forums. Go on, if you work for a company at the moment in HR, go on a Reddit forum so you can find a thread about it. Probably only the larger ones. I probably the smaller companies will struggle to find a Reddit thread about that kind of stuff. But go on and just read some of it, because that is genuine user insight there. Because people feel comfortable enough to tell the truth. People try and tell the truth on Glassdoor, but it kind of just gets disregarded and washed away as like, oh, well, that's not actually how it is here.
Yeah.
Well, it's not how it is for you because you still work there and are still happy with the employment situation. But that person left and didn't feel happy about their employment situation. So for you to disregard that is naive and irresponsible because you're like, this is the gift of feedback. The Glassdoor is the gift of feedback.
Gift of feedback, the gift that keeps on giving.
Read it and do something about it. Don't just say it was a disgruntled their employee. Like, maybe if there's 100 genuine positive reviews and one negative one, then that's an outlier, right? You kind of go, well, that bucks the trend. But if you're getting consistent negative feedback on Glassdoor, well, all of those people, not only have they felt compelled enough to write it on Glassdoor, they're sure as hell going to tell their friends, they're sure as hell going to tell their family, and everyone they used to work with and anyone they will work with. So congratulations, you've just created a huge amount of negative brand equity very, very quickly. But we somehow, TripAdvisor is a really good example. You know, you deal with it on TripAdvisor. You know, you have the companies responding and saying, "Oh, this is rubbish. Well, let's give you a £10 voucher for X or whatever, or come in for a free meal." We have that customer relationship where it's like, "Oh, one of our customers is upset. We need to fix that," but we don't have that relationship with our employees because we don't measure the value those employees give us when they're at a company and when they've left as well. Yeah.
Yes. And I think the leaving piece, as you know, that's my big bugbear. You know, rather than, you know, don't let the door slap your ass on the way out. How about building that relationship and changing and evolving that relationship? Because what we're going to see more and more is actually more of these boomerang employment, or, okay, we previously had you as an employee. Now we want to use you for seasonal contracting. We've got this big project. We're doing this. Can you come back? You understand, you've got the corporate knowledge and understanding of how that business works, but actually we don't need you full time. You clearly don't want to be here full time. So why don't we do something about it? Why does that always have to turn into some cloak and dagger, massive row, and everyone seems to fall out with a nasty taste in the mouth? It's just illogical to me.
Well, it's kind of pathetic. It doesn't have to be either or. Like, you can have nuance in how you work with an employee, but you default to the handbook. Like, you default to the handbook. And what does the handbook say? I'm like, well, like, talk to people, figure out what they need, and if they want it, give it to them and see if they become more productive and engaged as a result. If they don't, then you can have a serious conversation about their performance management. But if someone's dip in performance and engagement goes down, why is it, oh, it's the employee's fault? It could be the employer's fault, but that's never the tack that it's going. It's like, how can we make the employee perform engaged better? Oh, we'll put them through a performance review. And like, it might not even need the performance review. It might just need a conversation.
Yeah.
There's loads of people in our network that help organizations on this, by the way, like Kim Uzzle, in terms of financial well-being. Like, it could be that there are an incredible amount of financial stress at home, and it could just be a money thing. It could genuinely be just money thing. And I've gone to bosses of mine in the past and said, hey, look, struggling with cash here, like mortgage has gone up, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, you don't need more money. It's like, I've just told you, I think I do, because my mortgage has gone up. Like, you know, Liz Truss has just done like a apocalyptic budget, and the mortgage has gone up. Can I have a bit more money? Oh, you don't need more money. Cool. All right then. I will just start being grumpier at work and less productive. Oh, well, we're going to put you on a performance review. What? Because you're not meeting some of my basic needs in terms of matching, and even in that case, right, it was just matching inflation. You're like, how dare you turn around and assume you know what I need and want how it works? Well, I just told you that. Credit to them that I was felt comfortable enough to have that conversation, but then not to act on it is irresponsible. Again, it's irresponsible, and that, you know, that employer would have did this exactly the same thing with two people going through the menopause. Went, shit in it, deal with it. It's like, it's like, no, how do you adapt your workplace and the employee experience you offer to help them be the productive, engaged employee you want them to be? you can't say that you can't adapt the workplace for something that's biological. In that instance, biological. So we've talked about financial, now biological. All of these reasons why people aren't like performing their best in the workplace. But the result of those two conversations is we'll put them on a performance review. Because also, obviously, menopause isn't a protected characteristic. So, like, Sam, the world is broken.
We can fix it though, Toby.
Can we? I don't know. It's coming up to 5 o'clock on a Friday. I'll start again on Monday.
Yeah, I'll do it now. So now let's move on to lighter things, Toby. I have 4 insightful questions.
Have you got cue cards like a game show host? You kind of tap these things on the desk.
I kind of have, because I get excited and I forget them. So I had to write.
Nice.
I remembered. All right, Mr. Kheng, are you ready? And I owe you an apology because the CapCut auto cue put you down as Toby Khan, I think.
That's all right. I get it all the time. Like,
yeah. Anywho, favorite cheese.
Favorite cheese. You know, I'm not often speechless, as you know, and now I'm like, oh, favorite cheese.
I know. That's why I asked.
So there's a famous interview with the England footballer Steven Gerrard. He was asked this question, and he said his favorite cheese was melted cheese. And I love melted cheese of any variety. So I was like, American burger cheese, melted, lovely. Camembert in the oven, lovely.
A bit of camembert with bread in it.
Yeah, or breaded camembert is really nice. Or, you know, gooey mozzarella on top of a pizza. I think cheese melted is fantastic. So my answer is going to be, even having had a go at Steven Gerrard say melted cheese, I'm going to say melted cheese because it is the best. However, I can tell you the cheese I don't like, goats and blue. Get out of my face.
Okay, I'll have you blue. You can keep the goat
cheese. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I'm going to try and keep a straight face for the next one.
Okay, I'm worried now.
What is your most favourite inflatable toy in the swimming pool?
So I've seen a picture of you blowing up an inflatable unicorn, was it? I think.
Where did you see that picture?
You did. Somebody, a mutual acquaintance of ours, might have sent it to me.
Very naughty of them. Having words, and I know who that certain person is.
I forgot that you didn't know I saw that picture.
Rusty bags. I will be talking to you.
What favorite? Well, just a good old fashioned Lilo. Okay. Really boring answer. Oh, but it's got to have a cup holder.
You see,
for the old titties.
Perfect. You see, completely agree. I find these kind of things, if you're going away on things, it's really important that you we cover these things. So, funniest moment when you've been on the road this year?
Have you just put that in question because we've spent most of the time together on the road this year?
I mean, yeah, this is a self-indulgent Friday afternoon question for sure.
Oh, there was a moment where we both just lost it with laughter, and I can't remember why. I can remember us laughing a lot at a particular situation. Oh, that was it. On a internal flight between Minneapolis to Phoenix.
Yeah.
We got on the plane, and we were on the plane for maybe like half an hour, and they turfed us all back off because the pilot hadn't arrived. And we got off the plane, and an American woman came up to you and, "Hey, is that your toy boy?"
Oh yes, I forgot.
And I think our collective faces answered the question for her. And then she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And then apologies for the poor American accent, but like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And then she went and bought us both a drink, and then we ended up talking for a long time. But that was hilarious.
And it turns out she was a teacher.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
That was hilarious. I very much enjoyed that.
That was very, very funny, actually. That was very funny. And also the conversation between her, as clearly a very left-wing individual, and the chap who was sitting next to us, who was clearly probably more middle of the road, veering more right wing.
Well, I don't know. He was advocating for hitting children, and she wasn't. I remember that part of the conversation.
Yes,
And
but
we were just sat in the middle, kind of going, okay, we're gonna go and stand over here now with some other people because we don't want to get in the middle of this hot potato, as it were.
oh my days, that was just the funniest. I think my phone became the most fascinating thing in the universe at that moment in time. My final question to you is, and I know you'll appreciate this one, being a film buff, what was your worst film you've watched so far this year, and why?
I don't watch bad films.
I know, but there's always one that you think, God, I won't get those 2 hours of my life back.
Oh, this year, the worst film I've watched. I've got kids, right? So it'll be a kid, like a kids TV show that's come on. Hey, Sam O'Neill's in the comments. Hello. You don't like goat cheese? Yeah, goat cheese can get out of my face. I tell you the best kind of cheese, actually. It should be good old American cheese from Wisconsin. Go Pet Go. The worst film? I don't know, Sam. This is a really tricky one.
You see, I knew it.
We've got an under 1-year-old for the most part of this year, so we haven't really watched a lot of films. If we have the opportunity to watch a film, we've gone to bed. So I'd probably say all the films I haven't watched. I tell you what, it wasn't a bad one though, but because we watched a lot of films on the plane, all the films I really enjoyed on the plane.
We did watch some goodies. And if anyone is thinking about flying Air Canada, do fly it. Fantastic.
I can tell you, it's not a film, but it's like it's a documentary series. The America's Sweethearts, the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader documentary, which is clearly filmed as like they thought it was some sort of promo piece that made the Dallas Cowboys organization and the cheerleader organization incredible, and all it did was kind of made them look really, really bad. You like kind of go, oh wow, you're operating in like with the 50s, 60s mentality about women in the workplace, are you? Lovely stuff. It wasn't that bad, but like, yeah, that was really disappointing.
I love that. Perfect. Oh, Toby, thank you for being just such a brilliant first guest on my new show. And, you know, as you can tell, it went very well from a technology point of view to start with.
Oh, I completely forgot about that. I'm 1 beer into my evening, so I'm slowly eradicating the memory of this week. Do you not think, just as an aside, because you got 7 minutes before your next call, right? Do you not think this doesn't look like a beer can? It kind of looks like it should have white wine in it or something.
It looks like it should have white wine in it, or like a funky gin and tonic, you know, one of the trendy gin and tonics. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Rosa, MindAbility Matters brought to you by Rosa Blanca, beer from Mallorca. There you go. You got your first sponsor.
Oh, thank you. And if you do want to sponsor the show, please feel free. Nothing wrong with a good beer brand, is there?
No, I'm just trying to think of the best beer that we had in the States while we were there. I don't know. We went to that.
Good beers.
Well, we went to that nice brewery in Minneapolis, but the Green Bay Packers were getting absolutely hammered by the Vikings at that point. So the beer tasted really good, but there was a sour taste in my mouth because of the football score.
Well, yes, but we did also have a very good beer in Phoenix when we went out with Randy and Holly.
Oh yes, yes. I went to that brewery, didn't we? That was good. Oh, it was like a cherry sour beer.
Oh my god, that was very good. As you can tell, Toby and I do work hard, by the way.
Yeah, this is why we get along so well. It's just like, oh, we just drink beer. That's what we do. We actually get zero work done.
Which is not true to tax management.
That's not...
Very, very hard. Very, very hard indeed. Look at our client roster. We can tell we do. Toby, what are your final thoughts you'd like to leave with everyone today? And how does anyone get in touch with you if they like what they hear and they want to chat with you soonest?
If you do HR audits or if you do any level of fractional HR work, get in touch, because we've developed a model that allow you to have better, more strategic conversations with your clients that enable you to do the work you want to do and kind of just leave the work you have to do as a kind of nasty thing you do just to enable the good stuff. So if you want to do good work with clients, the stuff you love, then talk to us. We can make that happen. And I pretty much just exist on email and LinkedIn, so you can get me on LinkedIn. My name is Toby Kheng.
Oh, no, that way. Nope. That way. Had a drink.
You can catch me, toby@freeformers.com. There you go. I just put my whole email address out there for any I don't know, salespeople on LinkedIn. Send me messages about business development services, because that's all I tend to get in my spam folder.
Oh, yeah. We won't even go there with that. Toby, thank you so much for being such a great guest. Have a fabulous weekend. And I'm going to attempt to do our outro music. Bye.
Bye.